Hey everyone, welcome to Impact Marketer. Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur, growth hacker, and digital marketer. The host and creator of the Cult of Startup podcast, founder of Hevi Media, a full-service agency specializing in e-commerce brands, graduating with a degree in agriculture only to realize that he didn't enjoy using his degree. Completely self-taught and manages 5 figures per month in ad spend, directly responsible for over 2 million in new business for his clients, generating 5 figures per month, and all while having a team of 2. He is the definition of a lean startup, doing what I've always thought was impossible, which is to create something in near isolation, as he lives in a small town of San Luis Obispo, defying all odds that your environment determines your outcome. Recently losing 50 pounds while tripling the revenue of his business, he's proof that success influences every aspect of your life. Please help me in welcoming Luke Bayard.
What's up, y'all? I'm here.
All right, Luke. So, you built your business on Upwork.
Yeah, to some degree.
That's absolutely incredible. Or at least you scaled it on Upwork.
Yes.
Yes. How the hell do you do that?
So I about a couple of months ago had a client that disappeared on me. We ended up parting ways, and I said, okay, well, there's always this opportunity on Upwork. I mean, I could have gone after friends and family first, but I was like, well, let's see if Upwork has anything on it. I've hired people personally through Upwork, so I've had a good experience with it. And I also saw, I watched a lot of Major League Baseball, so I saw that Upwork was actually advertising on Dodger games. And I was like, if they're advertising on Dodgers games and companies like Lexus and Mercedes-Benz are also advertising on there, there's probably a likelihood that higher ticket clients are actually bidding on projects on Upwork now, because they may not have heard of it before. So I started bidding on projects. Roughly right around that time, I lost that other client. And I'll be honest, I only probably bidded on about 50 projects total. Got about 8 people to respond to me and landed 6 of them. So I was like, oh, dang. And that was just the initial thing. And I've continued to land other projects since then. But at the onset, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of opportunity tied up in this. So that was a big revolutionary game changer for me. There are also other clients that I sort of picked up along the way that were friends and family, that were ones that I just didn't have a time to devote attention to because I was preoccupied with other stuff at the time. And now they're wanting to work with me. I had one literally 3 days ago who was like, they dropped their web developer because they weren't doing the work that they wanted for them. It had been like somewhere around 6 to 9 months that they were leading her on in the website build. And she's like, literally called him up one day and said, F you, I'm going with this other dude. And she called me and said, how much is it going to be? I said, oh, cool. Because I was originally just going to manage her marketing for her. I was going to do sort of some giveaway stuff. I was going to do some media buying for the launch of it and things like that. And she's like, no, like we're just going to use you. So pick that up, and I'm like, all right, well, let's see what we can run with on this. There's a pretty short window. It's Q4 right now, so we want to get the site freaking done as soon as possible. But yeah, I used Upwork as a way to gain a bunch of new clients, and other ways of gaining clients is always just like asking for referrals and trying to find people outside of your current clientele that you feel like you're serving really well. Hey, who else do you know? That's one of the easiest ways to land a new client, because usually they've got some sort of skin in the game with it, and a referral is almost always premium, meaning the likelihood of you landing that client is significantly higher.
You bring up a good point with how you offer multiple services. I've talked to a lot of agency owners on both ends of this. A lot of people say specialize in one thing, just do paid traffic, but you kind of have a suite approach. And based on our conversations, it seems like you've landed a lot of deals because you can kind of build them into another service. So what are your thoughts on either the super specialization focus or do it all?
It's ironic that you bring that up. So during the time that I was kind of like, oh, my business is going to freaking flop right now, or I don't know what I'm gonna do next, I read a bunch of articles all about like focusing on specific niches. Like I was like, oh, I'll just do lead generation, or oh, I'll just do this. And I was like, but I don't, like, my knowledge base really doesn't reflect that at all. Like, my knowledge base has been pretty dang broad. And anytime something new has come up with a client that I've had to do for them, I've been able to execute it on at least an A- or B+ level. So I can pick things up rather fast and do it fairly well. So I eventually came to the conclusion that if you get a client in and you're able to do their website build for them or edit their website for them, because there's a whole entire conversion rate optimization piece that goes into e-commerce, and provide that value, they're more likely to actually want to work with you on the marketing side as well. So you can sort of parlay that website build into doing their marketing. It's like, well, I set up all your systems for you. Why wouldn't you want me to manage them? We offer that too. So a lot of the website builds that we do overall are not extremely advanced. We don't go well out of our way for it. Most of the time it's clients offering us assets. We do a little bit of styling, we tweak the templates, and then that's about it. So we're relatively reasonable on that price point, because we want to get them to the media buying stage, which then allows us to actually really optimize the website. Because then you start seeing customer behavior and you start watching them and what they're doing on the website, and then you kind of can refine from there. And I think that process is significantly more iterative than making ginormous assumptions as to how your customers are going to behave right out the gate and building a site for 30K or something like that. It's just not worth the cost in my mindset. Some other agency owners may disagree and be like, yo, that's a dollar amount you're missing out on. But I'd rather serve the client in their media buying and make them more money in that way, and make sure the site's just good to go and it makes sense and it's super functional.
You've mentioned that you execute on new ideas very well. What's your step-by-step process of doing that? Because I know that's a very consultant skill, and it's a very hard skill to articulate.
I'm thinking of how I'd articulate it. I'd say I'm a fairly simple-minded individual, so I can't really get lost in the complexity of things. So I think that maybe plays to my advantage, being super ADD and not being able to really focus on a lot of things. That I kind of go, well, what can I cut out immediately and what can I focus on for the time being? Enables me to make those kind of moves maybe more rapidly than some other people who might get hung up on something. I'm more of a individual who's like, okay, there are two paths, both could be valid. I'm just going to flip a coin and I choose one. Like that has happened multiple times, and you can always redirect your path. That's totally fine in doing this. I mean, there have been times where I've gone down the trail and been like, oh my gosh, that was 2 weeks of work, garbage. But that can happen, but I would say that's the exception out of doing all this. Once you kind of have the knowledge base of what you can offer and what the industry is, like, you can make fairly good decisions overall.
That complexity part is huge, because I am definitely someone that overcomplicates everything. I go deep.
Yeah. Well, I got a client right now that I'm working with, and we're doing their website build. They're awesome individuals. They're really nice. They're really friendly. But they're overcomplicating what the end result is. And it's, I mean, for lack of a better way of saying it, driving me a little nuts. I'm like, you just need to get me this. That's all it is. Like, just give me this. I can handle the rest. And they're like, well, what about this piece and this piece and this piece? I'm like, that can be taken care of. It'll be taken care of in due time. Like, I need this to move forward. If I don't have this, I can't move forward. So getting lost in the details, it's paralyzing. Like, it can be super paralyzing to any business owner. But it can be to your benefit. I think sometimes sort of letting that stuff lurk in your head for a period of time. I'm a big believer as of right now that time actually can be played to your benefit in many ways, that you sort of let things sink in before you make a decision.
Walk me through that.
So let's say if you have a big life decision or something that you need to make sort of in your life, and let's say that you need to, that decision, you know, is going to have potential ramifications long-term in your life. Waiting to make that decision entirely, I have experienced my thought process change over time to be what it should be, if that makes any sense. That one day I may feel this way or may think this way, but the next day it's completely the opposite, and be confident in both trains of thought. And then letting the third day and the fourth day and the fifth day pass and going, okay, well, here's the sort of survey of all of my thoughts, hence why I'm doing the journaling on it, that then I come to a much more accurate or a conclusion that I feel much more comfortable with at that time, or confident in taking that choice. So I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but I feel like there are appropriate moments.
How does that work with your simplified approach to things? Because I felt like with the simplified approach, that increases momentum because you move faster, but then you're saying to slow it down. So how do they work together?
I'd say slowing it down when it comes to the bigger life decisions. The rapid decisions usually are like, should this button be red or green? Let's say, like something like that. Or should we upload the catalog using Flexify or using Shopify's native thing? Either one works. Like those kind of choices, I feel like you can sort of have your own discrepancy in doing it. Or I don't know, choosing to go out tonight. Okay, I'm gonna go out tonight. I'm gonna have fun, and I just know tomorrow morning I'm gonna have to wake up early and do work. Like those kind of things. But when it comes to something that you know will potentially have ramifications for more than 3 to 6 months, if not longer than that, I really feel like taking the time to let that idea or mindset mature in your head can play to your benefit. Totally play to your benefit. But there's obviously two schools of thought in that. But just in recent history, I've really allowed myself to be more mindful of that, because I'm at a stage in my business where decisions could really impact long term, right? When you have smaller decisions with a smaller business, it's kind of easier to F up, right? You're like, oh, whatever. It didn't really matter that much anyways. But when you're handling hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cash every month of people, and you're sort of doing it on their dime, you've got to be willing to let yourself sit with some of that stuff a little bit more, and be more confident in it. And maybe over time, I'm cataloging these experiences that I'm allowing to have a longer timeline to eventually being shorter decisions. So, the next time around, I go, oh, this is my second rodeo. I've made this decision before. It took me 15 days to decide. Now I know I can make this decision instantly.
As a marketer, when you're kind of testing out new ideas, how do you set expectations properly, and still reassure the client of results?
Yeah. So I do a handful of things. One is I always try to promise at the exact level I know I can achieve or just underneath that, and then just slightly over deliver. And some people will be like, oh, you should always just blow them away. You should always do this. But I feel like, at least in the nature of the beast, if you're having these expectations flying left and right, it gets really hard to manage, especially if you have multiple people you're managing. So keeping those expectations sort of on an even keel, and as long as there is progress and it's noteworthy progress for the client, and they're happy about it, like that's the position you want to be in as an agency owner, because there's a lot to handle at times. So if you're, I worked with somebody, one individual who would overpromise this one client over and over again. I was sort of he was outsourcing the outsourcing to some degree to me, and the expectations that he was telling this client were just all over the freaking board. And I told the individual, I said, you really need to let me in on these meetings, because A, I think I could probably get more money for us, and B, I have no idea what the hell you're saying. Like you just don't know. Like you just don't know. You haven't taken the time to sort of understand this kind of stuff. So that's been my experience with it. Hopefully that sort of directly answers your question overall.
It does. What do you think of the approach of kind of having contingencies? So it's okay, yeah, we'll hit 20,000 opt-ins, assuming that this happens. What do you think of that? Because that's kind of the method I've been learning, and I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, gosh, it totally varies from client to client. If they are, okay, there's two classifications I've seen in this. One, brand new company. I always try to be very transparent with the client, going, we're just testing out a bunch of stuff right now. We're trying to figure it out. I don't know as good. What I know is proven methods I've seen work, but we're throwing 10 things at the wall and maybe 2 of them are going to stick. So I'm using valid sort of strategy and methods I know have some sort of validity to them or something like that. So there's that end of the spectrum, and really managing expectations carefully with that, understanding like, hey, like we're trying to gain customers. Can we break even first? Okay, that's milestone 1. Okay, we break even at a 1.5 ROAS. Awesome. Okay, we've gained 100 customers. Awesome. Okay, and then meeting each of those benchmarks as you go down to eventually get to a point where you're like, all right, now we're a cash flow positive business. And then the other end of it is if you have a client, let's say that's a little bit more mature. They have, I don't know, 15,000 customers in their system. They're doing 110,000 a year in revenue. That's an ideal circumstance to work with. And in managing expectations for a client like that, it's like, if they're doing that and their growth is relatively organic, you've got to tell them, hey, you're in for a wild ride once we turn on ads. If the product is good. That's kind of what happened with that other client that I ended up no longer working with, is we turned on ads and it changed their business. So there's that scale of it. And then if you've got a client, let's say, that's doing a couple million a year, usually in that situation, it's more of like they're just saying, hey, we need a media buyer. handle our media buying. Their operations are relatively dialed in, at least internally, for that kind of stuff. So those would be the three sort of circumstances and what I've experienced in managing. All have different trade-offs. There is definitely stuff of working with smaller clients where they become a little bit more demanding at times. So understanding that as an agency owner, but sometimes I honestly think if you're starting out, like, pick up a couple of those to really learn what it feels like, and understanding what you can and cannot offer adequately is going to benefit you a lot. So, I mean, maybe you don't need to do it, but I personally did it. And it benefited me because I saw what services I just don't want to offer. I just don't care about that.
Were you ever in a relationship with like a smaller, more demanding client where they asked for things that went against your marketing judgment and you did it anyways, and then it ended poorly?
Let's see. Come to me before with unreasonable expectations for, let's say, return on ad spend. And I've told them, like, that number can be achieved with this amount of ad spend. I mean, you spend less and you're just only going after like a premium ad set, something that is going to convert at a high return on ad spend. And then I really try to focus the conversation on, like, well, if you scale your business and you're acquiring more customers, hence you're going to be making more money if you have the back end of your operations really tight on your email, messenger, retargeting stuff. They'll come back and buy from you multiple times. So that's sort of how I've managed that. Clients that have ridiculous expectations and really want to throw their weight around. I've heard other agency owners say this, like, ditch them. Like, there's plenty of other work out there. Like, somebody who's going to sort of be that thorn in your side, like, why deal with them if they're going to be that way to you? Like, you obviously, there's no need for that heartache to happen, I think, in anyone's life. So I try to deal with clients that are relatively premium, let's say, or clients that feel like I am the go-to individual for that advice, and I'm the decision maker for it, and it's kind of nice. So I'm making that decision. I'm gonna take extreme ownership over those decisions and allow me to fall on that sword if need be. But over time, I've gotten better and better at it, obviously. So that's been my experience so far within those categories.
Cool, man. How would you reach higher premium clients that weren't on Upwork?
I've yet to honestly do it, to be honest. I would maybe ask for more referrals. So I've got a client right now that is in the media industry. It's a really solid product. It's used all freaking over. It's a premium product. It sells for about $2,500 to $3,500 a unit. And they're a client that I'm definitely planning on going, like, who else do you know in this space that really could use some help? And I'm sure their network is ginormous when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's how I would go about it at the start. I may realize that that's not a valid strategy. I personally, I know a lot of agencies that do like lead generation, like they run Facebook ads and trying to land clients and things like that, or they run LinkedIn ads. And I just haven't had to go down that path yet. I don't know if it's, I've been lucky and fortunate to not have to go down that path, or I haven't had the desperateness to go down that path. Not to say it isn't valid, but I've really enjoyed sort of, at least in the clients I work with, nurturing that initial relationship really well and having them have confidence in, like, hey, Luke is a high performer. His agency is executing really well on multiple fronts. We want to work with him now, if that makes sense. So selling them on the individual to some degree, as well as having that backbone of, hey, there's actually like proof in the pudding here.
Well, walk me through that like initial nurturing phase of how you sell them on you, essentially, right?
Yeah. So at least on Upwork, I actually have an initial thing that I send them that's relatively thorough. It's like a full freaking list of all the services that I currently offer. And it's literally everything from website builds to messenger marketing, email marketing, what have you, Pinterest marketing, all of these categories broken down, and all of these specifics of basically the actions that I would be doing on them. And I send that to them, and then I customize the first like 4 sentences of it based off of the job post. And it seems to work, because I think a lot of people at least don't Oh, actually, here's two other things. So if they don't list their website, I ask the question of, hey, can you send me your website so I can take a look at it? Not many Upwork people ask for that. And then the other question I asked, what was it? Why can't I remember the other question I asked? Oh, no, it's not another question. I always, instead of saying like thank you or cheers or anything like that, my salutation is thanks in advance. And I've noticed that also works really well for some reason.
Interesting future facing there.
Yeah. So thanks in advance. It's kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to be talking to this guy later anyways. So I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking that, but I started using it more and more often because I feel like it at least kind of resonates a little bit more, and it's maybe slightly more personal.
Interesting. So is that it? Like, you just, that first impression that matters the most?
Yeah, I would say definitely that first impression. I usually try to schedule a call with them. If I hate having to message back and forth on Upwork or through Messenger or email. It just like drives me nuts. It's like, hey, let's get into a conversation, because if I get into a conversation with you, I can go down the paths I want way faster and get you to the points that I need to understand your business in a much more holistic way. And then I can start making decisions on what needs to happen. If I do it the other way around, it's just like, I don't have time to do that at this time, or I haven't been able to multiply my brain out to somebody else to manage that for me. I don't know. I feel like I long-term, at least within my business, I want to hire somebody else who's going to be sort of my right-hand man or woman to manage the operations of the business, and then I'll sort of be the face of it in the end, and be the one who's out there generating leads, meeting new people, and finding those prospective clients, and knowing based off of my experience in founding the initial part of the agency, hey, what are the parameters and limitations of what we can and can't do, right out the gate. So then I can accurately get somebody on the team, or accurately not get someone on the team, but find the right client that fits our criteria. Because honestly, I think if our agency picked up somebody who was like a $3 million a year business, like that might be extremely complex for us to handle right now. Like that might have some ins and outs that just, I don't know that big of a business. I just haven't been trained on that kind of stuff quite yet. Not to say I wouldn't pick up somebody like that to try to figure it out, but that could be maybe out of my league. I mean, that might be an agency that's freaking huge, has experience with, let's say, like Salesforce, Commerce Cloud, or something like that. Like that's just a different league of a company.
But with your track record, I'm assuming you would just tackle it anyways.
I would totally try it out. I would not hesitate at all. I don't think I would hesitate at all for it. I would totally give it a go, and be very front going, hey, you're the biggest company I've worked with so far. Like, understand that, and as much as you can possibly educate me on this beforehand, before we get moving, the more it's going to benefit us both mutually.
So how do you sell someone with that kind of framing? It doesn't.
I've learned that being super transparent and open right out the gate is going to save you so much heartache, man. Like, both in life and business, I think being willing to sort of bring that stuff up. I've learned over and over again, if an issue comes up with let's say a client, that you don't readily address yourself, if that makes sense, it actually, like that sort of, if you see some error that you could make a decision on, but you need to like tell the client, hey, something bad happened, and you don't tell them, that's going to impact you big time down the line. Big time. It's burned me several times. I'm like, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal. Oh, it actually was that big of a deal. So
can you walk me through that example, or one of them?
Gosh, maybe something where it was like, I noticed maybe inventory was off in a system and a product was selling, but I was like, oh, this product's not going to heat up. And then it freaking caught fire in ads. And then like we oversold by like 1,000, or not 1,000, but like 100 units. Oh, and they couldn't get the product back in. So now you're having to offer refunds to customers or something like that. So that's sort of a scenario that you could see play out. Or a busted link in an email that you built and you didn't double check it twice and go, oh no, like we sent out that email with a busted link. Like little things like that can leak through if you're not careful in this industry, I'd say.
For sure. You mentioned this call, like you try to transition from a message to a call. It sounds like a discovery call. Is there like a step-by-step process or a framework you use to have these calls?
I do not have a framework built. It's more of just off the cuff, getting to know the person, their business history. I really have come to realize that companies that are very mission driven are much more fun to work with, rather than companies that are driven just on their P&L statement. Companies that are willing to sort of drive their mission actually can be significantly more successful, because they're hitting home on that point versus driving more revenue into the company. Certainly revenue is nice. You need to be able to pay the bills, pay the people who work for you, etc. But that's one sort of qualifier. I also sort of allow myself to jive within the conversation. Being a podcast host per se myself, if I feel like I enjoy the individual, that I can get along with this individual within the phone call, then yeah, that's definitely a qualifier of it. And then I ask them stuff about their background and their business, like, what is your monthly average revenue? Are you tracking your P&L statement? Are your taxes in line? Are you fulfilling by yourself? Or are you drop shipping? Are you doing this? What is your social media followings right now? How big is your email list? Kind of getting sort of an idea of like the overall, let's say like architecture of the business and what the schematics are, and whether or not I can build on top of what they already have ready to go. So like I have one of my first people I picked up through Upwork. It was a company doing like 150,000 a year in revenue, small shop, entirely organic growth, roughly 80,000 Instagram followers and like 20,000 Facebook followers, all organic, had never run a single ad. So like I'm going to be launching their ads here close to the end of the month to really amp them up for Q4. And it's going to be a boatload of fun, but like I was able to look at those numbers and go, oh, you're a good person to work with. Like there's so much here that we can work with right now. So there's that. And if they've worked with another agency before, I think it's totally fine to ask about their previous experience. Like what things did that agency not do for them that made them leave them? You know, what was missing in that? What was a part they left out? You know, oh, it took them 48 hours to get back to us on an email. Like, you know, that kind of stuff. So that allows me to learn, okay, this is not how you should operate, and this is how you should operate, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. Is your agency mission driven?
Good question. Yeah, in the sense that like I really, really like contributing to other people. Like I do own my own e-commerce brand that does a little bit a month, but I just don't focus on it that much because I really enjoy sort of serving other people and learning through that. Long-term goal is to not always be doing that, but I don't really have maybe, let's say, a mission written out for the business, because I mean it's relatively small at this point in time. It's not too big, but as it grows, like I do want to really incorporate company culture and things like that. I have had numerous calls with my mentor about that kind of stuff, of doing activities and, you know, making sure that you're serving your employees right so that they serve you right, and making sure that you just take into account those kind of things. And I'm excited to probably start of 2020. I'm going to be hiring 1 or 2 people that will be working full-time or part-time for me. Like that's going to be awesome. And that's like been a long-term goal of mine in this entire game of like, can I provide like a living for somebody else through my business? Like that's, maybe I'm freaking crazy for this, but like, I think that's a super satisfying thing to do. Like I've built something successful enough that it both provides me with income and provides 1 or 2 other individuals with income.
Incredible.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you know, mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
How has that affected your business?
So my original mentor I ever had on my first startup I ever did, which was building mobile applications for Major League Baseball. We went through an accelerator program, team fizzled out, but we were trying to like enhance your experience at the game through a mobile app. It's funny, like Major League Baseball eventually ended up doing the exact same thing like 2 years after we canned the whole operation. Timing is big in a lot of the stuff, man. So that was lesson learned right there for that. So having a mentor, he has a background in video gaming, was like sort of his primary sort of thing that he had a background in, and had worked with some major clients from like Honda to Ford and stuff like this as well, and building like 3D animations, holographic stuff, like baller items, and had teams all over the world. But I met him 6 years ago maybe, and he now lives in Berlin. So I hit him up on a phone call or on LinkedIn. I said, hey, my business right now is like doing all right, but I feel like it'd be really nice to sort of re-engage with you and just start doing weekly calls. So him and I meet every week at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays for my time zone, which is his evening. And the way I structured it is that on Tuesday night, I'll write up a question for him, and I'll maybe tell some story within the question and be like, hey, is this something you experienced or something you can give advice on? Or, I really try to outline some of those things to him. And then he gets his full work day to actually think about that question. So then he can come to me that night and I sort of pose the question to him again, and we discuss it for half an hour and we try to keep it real tight. And it has been, both for business and personal life, a really, really good measuring stick on progress. And I feel like being able to sort of talk to a mentor, and regardless of whether or not they have experience in your industry, somebody that you can go to that's willing to offer that advice and be sort of real with you is extremely beneficial. And I think part of the reason why my business, let's say in the last 6 months, has really, really taken off is I've been speaking to this mentor again for a little over a year, I think now. So there was some momentum built up in those first 6 months of talking to him that was sort of piecing together the components to allow me to make those changes in my life. And it just like caught fire. I was like, all right, cool. Now I have it all set up. I understand where I need to be. And I am in a position of power now versus a position of having to struggle through decisions, let's say.
Amazing. So you met him 6 years ago. How did you convince him to be your mentor?
A long time ago on LinkedIn messages. I think I just posted to him as, hey, I'm looking for advice. I have this company that's moving forward. I don't really I think I was having some struggles with somebody I'd hired as an ad manager at the time, and how do I properly view them as an employee versus somebody who's like a friend or something like that, and like really understanding those relationships were sort of some of my first questions to him about operational things. And we had things about like, how do we measure improvement in more detail and, have quicker learnings and things like that. We eventually sort of settled on a system that was sort of just like, hey, it's a weekly call. Here's what works. But I posted to him as, hey, I really want to move forward in this, and I would like to ask you to help me with this. And I think I even asked him like, hey, if you don't have time for this, I totally understand. Like that's cool. But if you do, that would be freaking awesome.
Does he mentor a lot of people?
No, I don't think he mentors anyone else.
So why you?
Okay, I think when he lived in the States, he actually mentored other startups quite a bit. But I don't think he mentors any startups currently. I felt like he was somebody very qualified to do this, that he's got a lot of like personality traits that I really admire. Like he's super disciplined, super straightforward, very into health, understands that kind of stuff, very into optimization. So I felt like there were some things that would sort of resonate, and there's been other things that sort of come out of it of like, oh, like there are a lot of similarities here. Like this is good. This is super positive. Why he was willing to do it, I think he saw my overall, like how I was when I went through the accelerator program as him as my mentor. And he saw that I was sort of the lead with a lot of stuff, that I was sort of like, hey, I'm the one who was making the decisions or being the one who was championing a lot of the stuff. And he knew that I had an attitude to like really make something happen, that I felt that I had this sort of lull of 4 or 5 years that was like progress, down different paths that didn't really pan out. I didn't know where I really wanted to do. I kind of had this opportunity with the agency. Like I just needed somebody to be like, if a question comes up, I would like to ask it of him. And sometimes questions honestly are hard to come up with, and sometimes questions are super easy to come up with. I mean, I've had nights where I'm up until 2 a.m. like typing on my phone, like, what the heck am I gonna ask my mentor tomorrow? And then I've had times where like it's been super easy. It's like, oh, this question is obvious to ask this week. Like this is exactly what's going on. But it's challenged me to sort of think introspectively of like, okay, what's going on in my life right now that I really need to discuss with him? Like, everything seems fine, but that shouldn't always be the mindset I have. Like, okay, there are things that need to be addressed. What could I address this week?
And I didn't get to ask you this earlier, but how do you keep up your mental morale or momentum when the ventures you had were failing prior?
Um,
Right? Because confidence comes
yeah,
from doing something successfully.
yeah. So I had two failed startups that went through accelerator programs and raised a little bit of money. Um, I had joined the entrepreneurship club when I was in college and kind of got the bug for it and knew that I wanted to have my own business 5 or 6 years ago. That I said, I want to have my own business. I don't want to have a boss. Like, I really did not want to have that in my life. Maybe it's part of my ego or something like that I need to really look at, but I just wanted to control my own destiny and have that free time as is. It took a long time coming to get to this point for sure, but I think I'm sort of unnecessarily optimistic in life, and it probably gets the best of me at times. Where I think a lot of people who would have been in my shoes probably would have said, you know what, that second one, it looked good, but nah, it failed. And honestly, there were other opportunities that it's somewhat ironic that popped up where I could have joined another team or been a co-founder or something else that went on to be actually really successful. Like, it's like, oh, like I had the money to invest in this and I would have been a partner in it. Dang it, I should have just done that. So I weathered those storms as best as I possibly could. I always knew I wanted to have my own thing because I just really wanted to determine my destination. Like, I wanted to, if I wanted to go to a theme park on a Wednesday, I could freaking go to a theme park on a Wednesday and take the day off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I kind of wanted to have that ability in my life to have that freedom and not be like, ah, shit, I got to go to work today. Got to be there at 8:30 and I can't leave until 5. Like, that to me, just, I don't know. I work way more than that anyways, but I just didn't want to have somebody else controlling where I could be at any given time. That's really what
Were
I
you
value.
ever, during that process, were you ever strapped for cash?
Oh, totally. Multiple times.
What did you do, like, from, I guess, a mindset perspective to get through that?
Rack up a little bit of credit card debt, to be honest. So that I wouldn't advise it, but I've only actually recently paid off all of that stuff, which is really nice. That if you are willing to weather the storm and you have the confidence in the fact that, let's say, if you have a setback and you can recover from it. I did have one of my podcast guests, who actually is also an agency owner, tell me that, like, hey, if you're an entrepreneur and you're not an entrepreneur if you can, like, get $10,000 into debt and can't figure out how to get out of it within like 60 days. You know, that's pretty powerful. Like, an entrepreneur should be able to figure out how to make that amount of money in 2 months. Like, and that sort of has stuck with me and has been sort of a fuel for me of, like, understanding, like, there's perspective in this. Like, somebody $10,000 to $15,000 in debt could be bone crushing to them, but to an entrepreneur, that should be funny money. So that might be bold to say, but I think that kind of mindset and approach is definitely needed in understanding that you should be ferocious in some of this stuff.
Absolutely. Last question, man. What would you want to tell your younger self?
Ooh. Finish college earlier. That would be one, or just freaking ditch it all together. That would definitely be one piece of advice I would probably tell myself. I graduated college only 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago or so, because I failed out of school. I lollygagged in junior college for a long time, and I felt like that was always a crutch for me. And I wish I would have honestly just said, okay, what's the fastest way I can get a degree? And, like, the easiest way to get a degree. Like, I wish I would have made that decision earlier and just been like, finish, get out of school, so then you can focus on doing this. And I mean, part of the reason why I did finish school in that is because my 3 older siblings and all of their spouses all graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And I felt like it was a good thing to do for my parents, that I needed to complete that goal in my life and be the 7th kid who graduated from the same school. So it's, like, kind of crazy that all of us have graduated from a very good college, oddly enough. Like Cal Poly is not an easy school to go to. I don't know how the hell I got in. So I wanted to sort of earn that, but I wish I would have been more calculated on like, how do I finish this quicker than later? And I just didn't take time to do that, partially because I was focusing on entrepreneurial ventures while I was in college all the time. So I kind of like, honestly, I maybe focused 25% of my mind on schoolwork, and the other part of it was either the girl I was dating, and then my business was probably 60 to 70%. So like, that's literally the breakdown of my life in college completely. But I really wanted to make something happen while I was in school. Like, I wanted to graduate and be like, I've got a business. So I would say that would be my word of advice to my younger self. Like, try to figure out a path to do that. And I maybe network a bit more, like really put yourself out there on stuff. I feel like I did a decent job at that, but I think I had situations where I wish I was measuring myself of the whole entire, like, you can really measure your life on how many uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. I think I didn't go out of my way to have uncomfortable conversations with big player entrepreneurs when I had the opportunity as a student to do it, because it's way easier when you're a student, man. Like, if you're going to school, like, freaking abuse that student card, because everybody wants to help out students. Like, if a student called me from Cal Poly and was like, could you offer me advice, once a week? I'd have a hard time saying no, like, to be honest. So like, it's a student, I've been in those shoes before. I think there's something about paying it forward in that way.
Damn, that's great, Luke. Thanks so much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. I can definitely talk to you for hours, which we did when we first met, so it all makes sense.
Totally, man. Totally.
Cool, man. Where can people find out more about you?
You can hit me up on just my Instagram account. That's LH Bayard, Bayard, or you could find me on the Cult of Startup one as well. So hit me up there at any point in time. If you feel so inclined to kick me an email, it's just lukehbayard@gmail.com. I'm usually open for anything. I'm way more receptive probably to respond to like an Instagram direct message than I am maybe an email, because I just don't check email as often as I probably should. But
there it is.
Yeah.
If you're a student, hit him up. He'll help you.
Yeah, hit me up. I might put a cap on it, so there might be 2 spots. That's it. I might not go past that. So time is pretty precious to me, that's for sure.
Cool, man. All right. Thanks so much.
No problem, man. Take care.